Hey guys, welcome to Module 1 on Communication and Culture. First, let's talk about some common acronyms in TESOL, in the TESOL field. These will be used interchangeably throughout the course, so please check back to this list in case you need it. CLD is culturally and linguistically diverse. We usually call students culturally and linguistically diverse. EFL is English as a foreign language. We use this when we're talking about English teaching abroad. ELL, or L, is an English language learner. ENL is English as a new language, which is the current term used in New York State for our field. ESL is English as a second language. We don't frequently use this term anymore since many students already speak 2 to 3 languages before they begin acquiring English. ESOL is English to or for speakers of other languages. IEP is an intensive English program. LEP is limited English proficient. New York State used to use this term. SIFE is students with interrupted formal education. These are often refugees, students who have not had access to academic situations in their home countries. And TESOL is teaching English to speakers of other languages or teachers of English to speakers of other languages. Communication, speech, and language all have different meanings in our field. Communication is a system for sending and receiving information, ideas, feelings, needs, and messages through a variety of semiotic systems, and these can be verbal and nonverbal. It requires a sender, a receiver, and it requires content. So some different examples: body language, clothing, gestures, art, dance, spoken language. These are all methods of communication. Animals communicate. Fireflies glow to attract mates. Dogs lick their puppies to bond. Cats rub against objects to mark their scent. Horses kick other horses to establish dominance. These are all forms of communication. Language, however, is an abstract cognitive system that uniquely allows humans to produce and comprehend meaningful utterances. And speech is the utterances of any language, including auditory, vocal, spoken language, and heard language, and visual gestural. These are signed languages, like American Sign Language. So what is a language? Human languages are characterized by certain design features. So all communication systems include a means of transmitting the message. They include semanticity, signals have meanings, and they include pragmatic functions, meaning the communication serves a purpose. We're not just making noise for no reason. Some communication systems, many of them, include interchangeability, meaning individuals can both send and receive messages. They're cultural transmissions, meaning a system is learned through interaction with other users of the system. Think about where we acquire language from. It's most likely from our parents. Arbitrariness means the forms of signals are not related to meanings. So if we think about the word hat, H, A, and T have no relationship to something sitting on top of our head. It's an arbitrary relationship. And discreteness. This means that complex messages are made up of smaller parts. Human languages also have other features, including displacement. We can talk about things that are not present in space or time. We can talk about the future, we can talk about the past, we can talk about the present, including things that are not currently around us. Productivity means that we can produce and understand an unlimited number of unique messages, and they never have to be produced previously. So if you think about the sentence, I Googled it, 20 years ago, this wouldn't have the same meaning as it does now. Feedback means we have the ability to monitor what we're transmitting. Specialization means speech exists only for communication. Duality of patterning means that meaningless units are combined to form arbitrary signs that in turn can be combined at a higher level to form new, meaningful, larger units. So if you think of the word blackboard, you can think of all the phonetics, all the phonemes that combine together to make the words black and board. They then combine together to make a compound word. And then we can use it into a sentence, the blackboard was clean. So that means we can keep building onto a higher level. And prevarication means the ability we can talk nonsense and we can lie using human language. So quick language facts. There are approximately 7,105 currently living languages. Language death is a very interesting field because languages, particularly smaller tribal languages, die at a very fast rate because of how rampant technology is and how easy it is to learn other languages that are more common. And have a greater ability to serve purpose for the speaker. The top 10 spoken native languages, so these are the language you're born into, your native language, include Chinese, Spanish, English, Hindi, that's spoken in India, Arabic, spoken in much of the Middle East, Portuguese, think Brazil and Portugal, Bengali, Russian, Japanese, and Landia, which is in Pakistan. So that's what a language is, but what does it mean to know a language? Knowing a language is knowing the different systems of related parts. So phonology is the sound system, morphology is the word parts and structures of words, syntax is the rules for ordering these words into expression, semantics is the meanings of the words, and pragmatics is the word use in different social contexts. So linguistic competence versus linguistic performance. Linguistic competence is what we know when we know a language. These are all the unconscious knowledge that a speaker has about his or her native language. Noam Chomsky, many other formal linguists investigate this aspect of language. These are the rules that govern our speaking unconsciously and our thinking. Linguistic performance, on the other hand, is the observable use of language. This is the actualization of linguistic competence. This is language in use. This is what applied linguists, social linguistics, language teachers, and others are more concerned with. They're concerned with how people actually use language. Communicative competence is a very important concept in our field, and it was begun to be really discussed by Knoll and Swain in 1980. So communicative competence means the ability to function in a communicative setting. So as language teachers, we need to go beyond just drilling and focusing on the rules of a language with our students. Rather, we need to focus on their ability to use the language for meaningful communication. I can, as a language learner, say agua in Spanish. This isn't a grammatically correct sentence. I should say quiero agua, I want water. But a speaker of the language, if I said agua over and over and over, they would understand, and I have communicated. So remember, grammar, it's an important tool in language, but it is not the only part of language. We need to focus always in our classrooms on communication and communicative competence, rather than on the set of grammatical structures. We never want a classroom anymore that focuses on worksheets and conjugations and translations. We want a classroom focused on communicative competency, so the students need to learn how to interact in a supermarket, for example. And then we teach them different grammatical structures to support that goal. That's what we're discussing when we're talking about communicative competence. Knoll and Swain argue that this competence is broken into 4 areas: sociolinguistic competence, which means appropriateness in various contexts, grammatical competence, discourse competence, and strategic competence. What does knowing a language not mean? This does not mean writing and grammar. Knowing a language does not mean that you have to know a written system. Linguists tend to study oral language rather than written language. And it doesn't mean knowing a grammar. Prescriptive grammar, this is what grammar books and teachers and others think we should say. These are the, quote, correct language usage. So oftentimes now you'll hear people say, oh, you don't mean literally, you mean figuratively. That's a prescriptive grammar. Descriptive grammar is just describing what people actually do or say with language. So we can say that people nowadays use literally in conversation when they mean figuratively. There's no judgment, there's no correct way to do it. So important to understanding communication is understanding some key concepts in psycholinguistics. Psycholinguistics is the study of language in the mind and how it functions in production, perception, comprehension, storage, and acquisition of language. Neurolinguistics is the study of language and the physical human brain. We need to know how language is processed because it teaches us to understand cognition. Language is a key component in thinking about how we think. Language is uniquely human. No other creature or device can do what we do with language. And it's important to understand how language is processed because of the application to other fields. When we think about text-to-speech software, automatic translations, information retrieval, learning how to read, and literacy skills, and relearning language for aphasics. There's different parts of the brain that control language. The temporal lobe controls perception and recognition of auditory stimuli, what you've heard. The frontal lobe is the higher level thinking and language production. The occipital lobe is associated with aspects of vision, so you have to remember language can be visual gestural as well. And the parietal lobe is involved with language production and perception. There's different language centers of the brain as well. So Broca's area is concerned with language production. This organizes our articulatory patterns of language and directing motor cortex when we want to talk. Wernicke's area is language perception and comprehension. So this is connected to Broca's area by a bundle of nerves. The angular gyrus converts visual stimuli into auditory stimuli and vice versa. So it allows us to match spoken words with an object and a written word. So another aspect of our readings this week will be file 11, and it really concerns with culture. But I wanted to draw your particular attention to what is culture. So we created this as a group I created this as a group from all of the different readings this week. So what is a culture? It's very broad and it's unique, and it has to be shared with others. It's a way of life that you identify with that includes visible and invisible traits. So visible, song, dance, arts, these are the products and practices of a culture. Invisible is the mannerisms, the attitudes, the priorities, etc. And these are the perspectives of a culture. Usually when we talk about culture, we break it into these 3 P's: the products, the perspectives, and the practices. Language and culture are unable to be separated. Language is created by culture, which is created by language. Culture can impact language practice. And it's important to note, humans can be parts of various cultural groups. I am a part of the American cultural group. I am also a New Yorker. I am also a Western New Yorker. I am a Rochesterian. I am part of different cultural groups that all break down. Del Carpio and Del Carpio really focus on the importance of considering students' cultural and linguistic backgrounds, so I want you to pay particular attention to this article. As our cultural and linguistic backgrounds greatly impact us as humans, and we need to understand these aspects of our students in order to better understand and meet their needs. These are not aspects of a student that need to be fixed. These are not aspects of a student that need to be forgotten. These are valuable components of them as individuals, and they are strengths and benefits brought to our learning environment. A bilingual student's metacognition skills often far exceed that of a monolingual student. So we need to look at this as benefits to them as learners and something that we can support in their language acquisition. This is not something that needs to be fixed about them. And the best way we can facilitate these learning environments is through culturally relevant teaching, where we facilitate learning environments that are relevant and where our students' cultural and linguistic backgrounds are important and considered in their L2 learning process. Enjoy the readings and the practice problems for this module, and let me know, as always, if you have any questions or concerns.